Hey
Hey,
Vicki.
how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad.
I see you have
Am I sideways?
questionable. There we go. Yeah.
I guess I'll hold it. I was trying to be clever and set it up, but we'll go in the
It,
hand. It's okay. It
yeah,
works.
exactly. Going in the hand. That's what I'm always doing too. It's that's how it's always showed up. It shows up sideways for everybody. Ooh. How's your internet connection?
Actually, it is not good, and that just reminds me. I'll turn it off the internet. I'll put it on the my,
There we go. No, that's a little bit clearer.
at like
Nice.
7:30 p.m. on where I am. It's like there's no chance of getting any kind of
Really?
signal news from me. I don't know if it's kind of outside of the city, kind of out in the dunes a little bit, or if it's just everyone's on the shift at the same time, but it's really slow.
Your the volume is just a little bit muffled all of a sudden. Or is that just me? Nope, that was just me, I think.
Good now?
Good on my end now.
Yeah, I'm good.
Adam just reiterated the same thing. So, okay, perfect. All right. So, how's it going? How was your day today? What'd you get up to?
Day was good today. What did I get up to? This morning had a nice little chat with Corey. We were talking about some speed stuff, going through a little bit of data. So that was fun. And then Tuesdays is our big Brock lead coach meeting. So Dave, Steve, Taylor, and I meet on Tuesdays and uh, go over some notes for the week. And kind of our big project coming up is usually after exams in April, we do like a 4-day boot camp for our staff student interns. And
Nice.
obviously, like, we're not going to be able to kind of pull that off as normal. So we're starting to organize what that's going to look like remotely and, figuring out the web-based service that we want to use and how those presentations are going to line up. So that's kind of the next thing on the go.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, let's start off. You mentioned Brock. Tell us a little bit about where you're working right now and what's going on for you.
Yeah, so I work at Brock University as the lead uh, sport performance coaches there. My main teams are men's and women's hockey and men's and women's soccer. And then through Brock, we're also contracted through Wrestling Canada. So I work with some of our national team wrestlers who wrestle with the Brock Wrestling Club. And then I take care of their strength and conditioning. And then there's like the Hockey Canada, which is the non kind of Brock stuff.
Oh, yeah, very cool. Compared to some of the other guests that I've had, I mean, everyone's had a little bit of a different path, I guess, to becoming a strength and conditioning coach. Yours is definitely different and maybe the most interesting. So why don't you tell?
TBD.
Yeah, maybe. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? So, you can start because I've asked everyone else to do this. Start kind of way back, like start at the beginning. Where'd you go to high school? Where'd you go to university and all that sort of stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I would say my path probably was a little bit different, but maybe it started pretty similar where like I grew up playing all types of sports. So I'm from Wasaga Beach, Ontario, which is where I am right now. I'm once everything got shut down, I decided it might be a good chance to come hang out with my parents for a little bit. So I'm at home. Went to school in Collingwood, high school in Collingwood, and played every sport growing up, every high school sport I could possibly play. And hockey was always kind of my main love and what I wanted to do kind of after high school. So kind of toward the end of high school, started to narrow down a little bit like my training and my focus on playing hockey at university. And I played 4 years at Mercyhurst. It used to be called Mercyhurst College. Now it's called Mercyhurst University.
Mhm.
Uh, so played 4 years there. And during that time, like kind of all the way through my time as an athlete up until still at the end of university. Actually, always I wanted to be a doctor. So I didn't take kinesiology or uh, anything kind of sport related. I just took straight up biology and
Right.
wrote my MCAT my third year and was pretty dialed in to start applying to med schools once I got into my but kind of toward the end of my junior year into my senior year, I got a chance with the national women's senior team. So I'd been on the development team a couple times during my first couple years at university, and then I made the senior team where making an Olympic team was always like always a goal, but I don't know if it was ever uh, yeah, I don't know if I ever considered it like the most realistic goal where I was okay where after the end of university, I got a chance with the development team and if it was time to move on and go to medical school, I was okay with that.
Hmm.
But then I had my last 2 years of university, like I had some pretty good years and got a chance to play with the senior team. And so once I graduated, I was playing full time with the senior team for a couple of years and got a chance to play in the World Championship in 2012, which is actually the last World Championship that we won in Burlington, Vermont.
Nice.
So, yeah, so that
Must be
was
some
that
sort of
was pretty.
correlation there, I would think.
I would think so. I think I've run some statistics on that, and they line up pretty significantly. So, um, yeah, that was I was still playing full time national team until 2014, and so 2014 was obviously an Olympic year, Sochi Olympic year, and so I was centralized with the team um, from well, we start centralization in 2013, and basically they bring 28 to 30 of us out to Calgary, um, and so we lived there, trained there for the entire year leading up to the Olympics, and then I was with the team the whole year, and then kind of right as the final cuts were being made, I was told that I wouldn't be going to Sochi, and I didn't make the team. So that was probably the most devastating thing that I've gone through as far as career wise, and it still still hurts. Doesn't I don't think
I
that kind
bet.
of wound just ever completely goes away. Um, but after that, I kind of did some reevaluating and decided like I always knew I was going to go back to school. I didn't know whether medical school was going to be the right route for me anymore. I was kind of now that I had been out of school for a little while and had the opportunity to live in Calgary for a year and train in some pretty high performance environments. I kind of got um, the bug to work in that same type of environment with athletes. And I was always really into the training, like just from a personal standpoint,
Hmm.
because I wanted to make myself better. And it's funny, like being back here, I've started like going down into the basement and just kind of poking through some old things. And like I've got just some like awesome old equipment setups that my dad built me of like stick handling machines and
Oh, you're back.
good.
Yeah. Yeah, you're back.
Steve just called me, so I had to decline him,
Oh, really?
unfortunately.
Tell him to
Well,
get on Instagram and watch us, and he could
uh,
feel like he's hanging out with us.
yeah, I'll have to. I'll have to bug him about it. Well, you have to get him on here at some point because he's pretty much every
Yeah.
conversation at some point comes to him, and mine will go there in like a minute anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, I started to. I was always interested in training, and once I got out of school, or sorry, once I decided to retire from hockey, I started my master's at Brock in kinesiology and still like strength and conditioning. Like I was interested in it, but it's still, I didn't know I wanted that to be my career. And then kind of when I was doing my master's, there were two kind of things that really pushed me in that direction. And the first was I started TAing, like that's just part of, one of your roles as a master's student. I started TAing one of the training principles classes, and
Mhm.
I realized I really love teaching. So teaching the labs and taking the material and and trying to put it in ways that the students could get a grasp on it. I really enjoyed it. So that was kind of the first thing. And then the second thing for my master's thesis study, I started training the Brockmans and women's hockey teams. They were participants in my study. And I just really enjoyed being in the gym and just realized that, coaching in the gym is no different than teach, just different environment. And after that, I realized, like, yeah, strength and conditioning might be for me. I really like it. By that point, that would have been 2000, like 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. And I had no experience with strength and conditioning whatsoever,
Hmm.
besides me just being an athlete and experience that uh, I'd had with training the hockey teams. And so I decided that I needed more on the floor kind of coaching time. So I did an internship with Steve at Mac, a summer internship.
Hmm.
Uh, the summer, the last summer of my uh, when I was finishing up my master's, and as an intern, I was like a 24-year-old intern. When I was with much younger interns, but it was something that I knew I needed
Hmm.
to do, and I needed to get that experience. So it was definitely different, kind of being a lot older than everyone else, but at the same time, like I got everything possibly out of it I wanted to, and more, and um, kind of the way a lot of things work. I was in the right place at the right time, where it was around that time that Steve was transitioning from McMaster to Brock and was looking to hire two strength and conditioning coaches. And I was already there training the hockey teams. Like, I had known Steve forever, like through being an athlete in Hockey Canada, and then had just done the internship. And so I got hired full time at Brock to train the hockey and the soccer teams, and then been there ever since. I think our first official year was 2016, so we're going into year 4 now, and been growing, and it's been awesome. I love it. I love it there.
Nice. How have you felt like being a high level athlete? How have you felt that that's impacted your ability to deliver on the strength and conditioning side?
Yeah, I think it helps a lot, and like you just have this such a deep understanding of everything, like the athlete is going through at any point during the year. Like when we're talking about our varsity athletes, you know, they have such periods of high stress times, like high academic stress,
Hmm.
where they're studying for midterms or exams, and having an understanding of how much that actually affects you physically and your ability to perform on the court or the field or the ice. And being able to manage their mental and physical states going through periods like that. And then on the other side of it, in like during, if I'm with Hockey Canada, like when we're in a short-term competition scenario,
Hmm.
where like you have to optimize every physical quality in a short amount of time, and make sure that you're taking care of the travel piece of it and the recovery piece of it. Going through what it feels like as an athlete, flying across the world and then having to perform, a day or two later. I learned a lot about myself, like physically, and then being able to apply some of that and help the athletes, and just yeah, having that understanding of what they're feeling at any given point.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Okay, we're gonna switch gears really quick. We've got some rapid fire questions for you. Sometimes I
Nice.
start out with it, sometimes I finish up with it, sometimes it comes out in the middle randomly. Just depends, I guess, when I think about it. Um, so I've asked everybody else this same question. What are you currently drinking, or are you drinking anything?
I am, and this would not surprise anyone who knows me. Uh, well, just dummying a big bottle of
Nice
Perrier.
big bottle of Perrier.
Yeah,
Very good.
that's pretty much the Vicki Bendus standard.
Well, at least it's bubbly and
It is.
yeah,
It's
and tasty
refreshing.
and refreshing. Very nice. Okay, number two. It's a weird time right now. Everyone's got a little bit of extra time on their hands. A lot of people are binge watching various shows on Netflix or other things. Are you binge watching anything right now?
So I am, and so I'm doing a little bit of a throwback, and I've been kind of chipping away, but now that we have extra time on our hands, I've been putting a good dent into it. I've been going back and watching Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and
Nice.
it's so good. I don't know. We watched it as when we were kids, when we were younger, when we would get home from school, and maybe I just have more of an appreciation for like Will Smith now. He's so good
Yeah.
at what he does. Like I love just watching people who are really good at what they do, no matter what it is. And like I don't know how old he was when he was doing that, but like so talented.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I have the exact same memories, like coming home and watching that. And what would have the other show would have been that would have been on around the same time? It would like Saved by the
Well,
Bell maybe, and then
yeah, Saved by the Bell,
Fresh
like
Prince
Family
or something like that.
Matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Steve Urkel. I don't know, Full House, like all those ones.
Well, yeah, yeah, I totally remember that stuff, and yeah, that's a good idea. Like I have this thing where I have The Office on like on repeat. I watch like one episode a night before I go to sleep. I think it just like shuts my brain off and
Yeah.
helps me go to sleep. But I got to switch it up soon. Plus, I heard The Office is leaving Netflix, so I got to figure something else out.
Oh, yeah. So yeah,
Could be wrong.
the Fresh Prince is one that I'm going through right now, and then kind of like my version of The Office that I just watch all of the time is Seinfeld. That's kind of like
Yeah,
our one of our like family shows. We all just watch it, and if it's on the TV, like I can't not stop at it. It's just I love it. It's classic.
yeah, I love a good Seinfeld episode for sure. Okay, so on the lines of binging, what about reading? Are you reading anything right now?
Yeah. So a book recommendation by Corey, and I got to be more careful about the recommendations he gives me because this one is like
Heavy.
Bible thick. It's called Surfaces and Essences, and
Hmm.
it's all about how our brain works through making analogies. Like that's our entire thought process and our I don't know our entire way of processing information is by creating analogies. But I feel like it's one of those books where you can read it and not make any progress because it's so thick. But I'm about halfway through now, so I feel a little bit better. But that's kind of the main one that I'm reading right now.
Cool. No, that's nice. Yeah, Corey's given me a couple of big book recommendations as well, and sometimes they're a little thick, tougher to get through, but usually really good. So
Yeah, it'll like it's good, but it's just gonna really slow down my progress of reading any other kind of book for a while.
right. Somebody just asked on the bottom here, what is it called again? It's you
Uh,
said
Surfaces and essences.
nice. Last rapid fire question is what was for dinner tonight?
Uh, Dinner was leftovers, so I had some
Leftovers.
flank steak, roasted potatoes, and some spinach. So I don't know about you guys, but like we're trying to minimize our grocery store trips.
Hmm.
So just like holding on to leftovers and dragging them out for as long as possible, and then usually like the last meal, like the last dinner meal before we go and do another grocery shop is like breakfast for dinner. It's like the last straw, and then we're like, okay,
We
probably
gotta
should go
go.
to the grocery store. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so in normal circumstances, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your culinary skills?
Ooh, I would say I don't like is 10 like Michelin chef like
Probably, yeah. Well, no. 10 is, your friends would go out of their way to comment on how good of a cook you
oh
are, how
no,
good of a
I'm
chef you
not
are.
that.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say like solid like 6.5 to 7. Like
Okay. So you try,
I
you can get by.
yeah, I can barbecue pretty well and like that's actually something that I've been doing a lot more of like since all this started. I used to actually really enjoy cooking and when I was an athlete like I would cook all the time. But like since I started working full time, that's definitely taken a hit and relying a lot on like burrito boys and stuff like that. But the last like couple weeks, I've been cooking a lot more, and so it's been nice to kind of get back in the kitchen, and it's getting close to barbecue season. So yeah,
Hmm.
maybe
Nice.
I'll take that from a 6.5
Okay. So let's
to an 8.
rewind okay. You're bumping it up. Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
We can rewind a little bit before we kind of then jump forward. So you talked about where you're from. You're from Wasaga Beach and, grew up in that area, Collingwood. Tell us a little bit about, what was it like growing up there? What were your hobbies? What did you and your kind of friends get up to? All that sort of good stuff.
Yeah, so we were kind of like I said, like I played every kind of sport, so all my friends were pretty athletic, and uh, a lot of our activities center around sports. And playing soccer at recess or hockey at recess or whatever it might have been. So I growing up, there's like this like three musketeer group of me, another friend named John, and one named Mark, and we were kind of like inseparable, and we're all pretty athletic. And uh, John, he was like really good at karate, but for he wasn't that good at the other sports. So for some reason, like Mark and I thought that like it'd be smart to chirp him about the
Oh
other
yeah.
sports, and like he could really kick our butts if he wanted to, but he couldn't because of the whole like discipline and martial arts stuff. But
Right.
um, we were so we grew up together, the three of us, and we still keep in touch. It was actually John's birthday a week or two ago, and then on after kind of high school, like during high school, because I was started to get so focused on hockey. A lot of my friends ended up being like girls from my hockey team, and I have some really close friends from my hockey team that are probably like my best friends, and ones like girls from school and stuff like that. Are probably my closer friends and my high school friends because once I got into high school, it was like I was pretty tunnel vision, and because I lived in South Beach, like I couldn't play competitive hockey here. I had to play in Toronto. So it was basically right after school. My mom packed me in the car and we would drive an hour and a half to practice or a game. So it was just I wasn't going to a lot of the high school parties and stuff like that because I was always just going to play hockey or going to
Vicky,
games.
just one sec. You got a little bit muffled again. I'm not sure if maybe your sweater covered your
Let me try. It
better.
might.
You're better already. I think that's all it was.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
Can you hear
the
me now?
last thing I heard you kind of talking about was kind of you were pretty tunnel vision once you were in high school.
Yeah, so like once I started high school and like knew I was gonna play hockey in university, um, I didn't go to parties and I was just focused on kind of that main goal. So uh, like I said, my friends started to be just mostly my hockey friends because that's who I was spending the most amount of time with. And like I still have friends like had friends in high school and stuff, but it wasn't they weren't as close as my hockey friends once I got into high school.
Right. Cool. Okay, so you talked a bit about wanting to go to med school while you were in university, but as a kid, if you were to have been asked, what you wanted to be when you grew up, what would have the answer been?
So my answer was pretty much always my both my parents are vets, veterinarians, and I wanted to be a vet, just like my parents. And my dad said no, like there's no chance you're being a vet. Like it's too much school for not enough money. Like you may as well just be a real doctor. So that's kind of the route that I ended up going. But when I was a kid, like I thought I wanted to be a vet. Like we always had pets around, we still do. And my dad decided no, probably better to be a real doctor.
Nice. It's funny. Speaking of binge watching shows, I've been watching we got Disney Plus, just like for this time period, basically for the kids to have a few more options of things to watch. And we've been watching this show called It's a National Geographic show called Dr. Oakley, Yukon Vet. Anyway, it's awesome. Like she's out there in the Yukon and in Alaska with like
Oh
big
yeah.
game animals and all these other types of things. It's super interesting. Yeah.
So when
Just
I was growing up, like my because we live in a small town, like vets would do large animals and they would do small animals. They like most vets now are specialized just like human physicians, but like when we were little, and because I have an older brother and older sister, and my parents were working full time, they had three practices at one point, so just a lot going on. And
yeah.
so if my dad got a call to a farm to go see a farm animal, like he would just throw us all in the car and we would be off to the farm to so he could go take care of the farmer's cow. And there's like one memory that is just vivid in my mind of I guess this is a I don't even know why I'm telling this story, but uh,
No, it's
he
good.
was there was a cow, I guess, who was trying to have a calf and she was having a hard time. So my dad had to go help it out, and like he just like had to end up like reaching in and yanking the calf out, and that vision of my dad pulling a young calf out of a full cow was just like seared in my brain for like years. Where I think I don't think,
Out
yeah, I don't think I could visit a farm for a long time after that.
nice,
But
out of a full cow.
yeah, so it's probably not okay for little kids to see, but maybe it toughened me up somehow. But I definitely have memories of going to farms and watching my dad take care of animals, or just being in the clinic and seeing my mom take care of animals in there. So
Yeah, just to take that
that's
one step
pardon.
further, that show, the show that I'm talking about, is
Yeah,
probably 70% castration of various types of bulls. So that's a quite weird. It's a weird
yeah.
situation for
It's
that show.
not like an everyday type of thing. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so now we can fast forward back a little bit or
Yeah,
jump back
sorry.
on track of some kind. No, it's fun, man. This is what I like to do. Talk a little bit about where you're at now. So you're at Brock. You've talked about the teams that you're working with and that sort of stuff, but you're also, you've done a bunch of school in the last few years. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was doing my master's from 2014 to about 2016, and then once I got hired on full time at Brock, kind of took a break away from like being in university classes, and then I always kind of had in the back of my mind that like a PhD was something that I would enjoy doing. I found when I was doing my master's that I enjoyed the process of going through, conducting a research study, and like I really enjoyed the kind of academic side of things. But having those kind of couple years away, I think was really good as well. Just kind of gave me some time to get an idea of a project or something to dig into that I could be kind of really excited about, and something that I was always curious about. So I officially began my PhD this fall, and it's I'm really fortunate because at Brock they allow their full-time employees to do continuing education through Brock part-time. So uh, Dave, Steve, and Taylor are all doing their masters right now as well. In their masters right now as well, and we're able to do that while still working full time. So it's kind of like a working PhD where I'm going to be able to use a lot of the data that I'd be kind of collecting anyway, and digging into it a little bit more, and making it a little bit more of a formal process.
Yeah, that's really cool, and you're right. That is an awesome situation to be in. Tell me your thoughts on, you talked about taking some time off between your undergrad and your master's and your PhD, and the importance of, if people are listening or end up listening that are interested in this kind of route, the importance of kind of, either figuring out what you want to do and taking your time, or, working and getting some hands-on experience in between hopping into projects like those.
Yeah, and I think I like now that I can reflect on it, like I'm so thankful that that's how things worked out, that I kind of had those gaps, but um like it wasn't something that I planned ahead of time, but it certainly does allow you to fully dive into the process, and be fully confident that that's something that you want to do. Where, if you're going, right from undergrad to master's to PhD, you don't have that kind of time to reflect, and make sure that you're entering that process and able to kind of jump in fully. For my PhD, especially, like having that time, that couple years in between of a lot of hours on the floor, a lot of hours, with the athletes, and starting to get a handle on the numbers that were coming in, that like the performance testing data that was coming in, and then really starting to formulate questions that I had, and being curious about things. Allowed me to kind of start to hone in on something that I could get excited about for the next couple of years. And um, yeah, I mean, at Brock, we're fortunate that we have a lot of student staff, uh, student interns who
Right.
intern with us, and we're able to kind of teach them the foundations of strength and conditioning through that. And a lot of them, get toward the end of university. Next step is whether they should go right into a master's.
No. Oh,
Better.
got it again, I think. Yeah, better.
Not all of them want to be strength and conditioning coaches. Some do. Some want to go into therapy, some want to be teachers, stuff like that. But just those couple years in between, if you're not sure, they just give you some time to really be confident in your next step. And things start to get clearer. If you give it a little bit of time, and I was kind of able to naturally go through that, just the way kind of my those years between undergrad and now cycles out. But yeah, I don't think it's ever a bad thing to take a little bit of time off in between.
Hmm.
Um, if you're not fully sure.
Nice. Yeah. Maybe just do one more quick mic adjustment, and then I'll ask you another question.
Maybe I should ditch this. Is that better?
I could. Yeah, that works so far.
Let me just go with
Okay.
that.
I had a couple questions around, first of all, your PhD. So tell us, working in the sport world, leading up to doing your PhD, I'm sure you have been able to formulate a question that's going to be, quite applicable in the real world. So tell us a little bit about what you're up to.
Yeah, I hope so. So like you kind of nailed it already, that, the end goal of the PhD is to have something very applicable come out of it. At the end of the day, I'm a coach first, and I'm sure you see this as well, where, there's a lot of research that's been done in the past, and it's still getting done, that, you know, isn't necessarily the best for us to read as coach, and then be able to take those concepts and apply them. So
Mm.
one of my overarching goals is to make sure that whatever comes out of this, a coach that's working with hockey athletes, somewhere else, who reads the research, they'll be able to take something from it and use it. So kind of my main global overarching theme is trying to unravel some of the layers behind skating speed, and what makes an athlete fast on the ice. And the way I'm kind of laying it out is breaking it down into three different studies, or three different sections, where, the first piece of it is trying to determine some of those underlying performance metrics that contribute to honest skating speed. So we're going to be doing some sprint profiling with 30-meter sprints with our hockey players. And I'm really fortunate that my supervisor, Dr. Brian Roy, like he's awesome. He's been incredible so far, and he just got us a stalker radar gun for the lab. So I'm
Nice.
going to be able to do some really good velocity time profiles on and off the ice. And then we also are going to be doing some jump profiling of the players using our force plates. So using those metrics from the off ice sprinting and the jump data to build a bit of a model, a predictive model of skating speed, and trying to identify those handful of KPIs would be the first kind of section. And then, after that, getting an idea of, how does speed on a speed change longitudinally over the course of a year. Like, we know that it's gonna fluctuate. So having some longitudinal data of skating speed at several different time points.
I'm
At several different time points through a season, and then tracking those sprinting and those jumping metrics with them, and seeing if those handful of metrics, that we identified early on, see if those fluctuate with skating speed. And then the last study would be kind of like we talked about before, something applicable. So a training study where we've identified those metrics that we think are important. Okay, well let's train them, let's get them better off the ice, and then let's see if we see that transfer to on ice speed. So that's kind of right now how it's breaking down. So this year, like because this was year one, this year was getting a lot of coursework out of the way, and then just
Hmm.
formulating some of those studies are going to look like, submitting ethics, stuff like that. And then the kind of more formal process will begin next year, hopefully.
Nice. Just because it's one of the areas of interest for me too, like what are some of the jump profile metrics that you're currently honing in on or currently thinking about?
So right now, like as you know, with the Hawkins plates, we get a ton of metrics out of them,
Hmm.
and I've been playing around because I'm in a stats class right now. It's actually a statistical modeling class, so I was able to kind of run a whole bunch of different types of models on a lot of that data, and just kind of see what comes out, like just more so experimental than anything, and getting a handle on the different modeling types. So the essentially I'm gonna be taking all of the from unweighting to takeoff metrics. So all of the propulsive metrics, all of the takeoff metrics, not taking any of the landing metrics, and they're all going to go into the model. And the way the model set up is it is able to kind of eliminate redundant and non-contributing
Hmm.
uh, variables. So I'm able to kind of throw everything at the wall, and then the ones that emerge consistently out of the model will be the ones that kind of we take moving forward.
Cool. That is, yeah, that's super interesting, and I'm really excited to see the outcome of that because yeah, that's the same kind of stuff that I think about all the time with the sports that I work with, and it's just not always 100% realistic to try to do, to do a study like that while you're fully embedded in the field. So to have people like you that are out there doing that stuff for us, it's awesome.
Well, that's the goal anyway.
Hmm.
I I've always just enjoyed looking at numbers, I think,
Hmm.
and you know, being able to have a tools like force plates, or even just like tracking, sprint times, 10-meter times every week. Like I just think we can learn so much from our data, even if we're not like formally analyzing it or making models or whatever it might be. I've just always like thought that observational piece is you can learn so much from it, and how what the normal fluctuations are with your athletes and stuff like that. So I know when we're talking about skating speed and how to get athletes faster on the ice, I think there is a gap there in the
Hmm.
in the research base where I don't know how much of a handle we have on how much of a player being fast is related to just those purely physical pieces, so their ability to produce power or force or whatever it might be versus you know skating as a skill. There's a huge technique component to it. So trying to get an idea of how much of an athlete's skating speed is coming from those physical pieces and how much are coming from the technique or the motor control pieces, where hopefully, some of these studies or some of the analysis will help shed a little bit of light on it. And at the end of the day, you want that data to be able to make some sort of help you make some sort of decision on that athlete. So if you've identified these metrics, and there's athletes on your team that are very good performers in those metrics, but they're not good skaters. Well, that tells me maybe technique on the ice is something that they need to pay a little bit more attention to, and the physical piece is, a little bit is not the thing that's holding them back on the ice.
Yeah, yeah, that's super interesting. Like I've been listening to a ton of podcasts or webinars and that sort of stuff since they're all over the place now. Just talking about, especially through systems like Hawken Dynamics, and what all the metrics that they have and what different people are interested in, and it's all a little bit different, which is I think totally fine. And so it kind of led me to look at. I was lucky enough to have a bunch of the softball players that I work with kind of centralized in Halifax for 6 weeks. We were doing a force plate like 3 times a week, force plate counter movement jumping, but we were also doing some tracking of exit velocity, like batted ball exit velocity.
Cool.
And I sort of did something similar to what you did, just threw all the numbers at the wall and saw what stick. And what really seemed to stick with in terms of relationship with hitting was a metric that I had not really ever looked at before, which was net propulsive impulse. Like none of the braking metrics seemed to matter. None of the
Yep.
power metrics seemed to matter, except for maybe average power, not relative, irrespective of body weight. So it kind of,
Yeah.
and I previously had been looking at some of these other metrics as like what I was tracking for them, like, peak relative power or jump height. And it turns out that those metrics actually correlate pretty well with speed, but have nothing to do with hitting. So if I'm looking at improving, physical capacities to improve hitting ability, that's the one I need to look at versus these other ones. So yeah, it's that same sort of deal, just maybe in a much smaller scale, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's so important to, you know, look at the data from your own population of athletes because, for example, like some of the data and the models that I ran, you know, I separated it too just out of curiosity, with my women's players versus my men's players, and some of the metrics were slightly different.
Mhm.
Because we know that they have different athletic profiles, and one of the metrics that you just mentioned, relative net propulsive impulse. Is that what we said?
Relative would be one. The one that seemed to correlate well with exit velocity was just net propulsive impulse, and I think it has to do with just generally being larger helps you hit the ball harder, but that probably doesn't help with skating.
Yeah, so it was relative net
Yeah.
propulsive. That seemed to be one of those metrics that kind of consistently emerged. Um, Propulsive relative peak power was another one. Like again, both of these are just preliminary. I'm not willing to kind of bet my car on those yet.
Yeah,
But
same.
the more you run the test and the more the bigger sample size that you have, if those kind of metrics keep showing up, then you can start to say, okay, maybe there is something to this.
Yeah, and just like you said, kind of the last stage of your PhD process could be, once you figure out what those are, make them better, and then does the skating actually improve? So
You
that's
got it.
obviously the goal.
That's great.
Okay, so I'm going to have one more question for you, Vicky, but in the meantime, I'll ask everybody that's listening. There's a few people on, which is nice. If they have any questions for you, now's the time to ask, and might only pop up on my screen, so I'll ask them unless you can see them too. But while we wait for the questions to come in, the last question is going to be, we've talked the last little bit, we've talked all about kind of work-based stuff. So what are some of your hobbies now, like non-strength and conditioning wise?
Um, we're a big cottage family, so we've got a cottage up north. So anything cottage related, I'm pretty up for. So we do a lot of water skiing, a lot of tubing. I take my bike up there. So that's kind of always been our getaway. We during the hockey season when I was growing up, we were always way too busy to do much of anything, and then the
Hmm.
cottage was always our summer getaway on the weekends.
Nice. How about around St. Catharines? Kind of a newish town for you, I guess. Not really. You've been there for a while, but
I feel like I've settled in now. It's yeah, it's grown on me a lot. Like I grew up in a relatively nice area where I am now, but no, Niagara's grown on me a lot, and there's so much good like biking and scenery through the wineries and Niagara on Lake and Pelham. So I do a lot of road biking through there. I haven't ventured. I know there's mountain biking through there too. I haven't ventured too much into the trails yet, but that's kind of on my to-do list as well.
nice. Okay, we had a question from Connors 623, just asking, what's your favorite all-time memory from playing hockey?
Oh gosh. Uh, Favorite all-time memory playing hockey. Probably. One of them is so when I was at Mercyhurst, my second year, my sophomore year, we uh, we made it to the Frozen Four, and I think we were ranked four out of four teams, and we were playing Minnesota in the semifinal, and we just like dumped ourselves and like pulled every possible piece of energy out of ourselves and beat put the Gophers out, and that was when they had like all of the American Olympians on the team, like Darwitz and those ones, and
Yeah.
we somehow managed to beat them in overtime, and it was this like huge, incredible like underdog win for us, and we were so jacked but so gassed. Like the next game we went to play like Wisconsin in the final, and they dummied us. We had nothing left, but we were still so jacked just to be there. So
Yeah, nice.
that's definitely a good kind of hockey memory, is just winning that game as huge underdogs, and then like winning the 2002 World Championship is will always be incredibly special as well.
Where was that one?
That was Burlington, Vermont, so not too far
Oh,
away.
nice. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. Well, we haven't got any other questions yet. But what is on your schedule for the rest of this week? What are you up to the rest of this week?
Tomorrow, so normally in the summer we run a summer internship. So, where students from outside universities can apply and go through our summer internship curriculum and help us train some of our summer athletes. Uh, so we would normally go through an application process and an interview process for that. And knowing that that's probably going to look a little bit different this year, where it's probably still going to be online. It's probably going to be online based. We're still going to run it. So tomorrow we've got a couple interviews
Okay.
for those positions, and then a couple return to play meetings with our therapists and a couple athletes. And then I should probably look and see what else I have to make sure that I'm fully prepared for the day. But those are the two big things. We got a couple interviews and then a couple return to play sessions with our athletes and therapists.
Cool. Mel Lacroix is on here, and she just kind of reminded you that you might have forgot about your Patty Casimir win.
Yeah, that took place in university. It's in there somewhere. That was
Yeah,
junior.
it's a
That was junior year.
was it
That was
nice?
and we underachieved that year. So that year was kind of the exact opposite, where we came in ranked number one, and we lost in the semifinals to Cornell, to a lot of the girls who were uh, still kind of in the national program. So like Fortina would have been on that team, Jenna would have been on that team. So they ended up beating us in the semifinal when we were ranked number one. So that one has a little bit of bitterness toward it, even though I ended up winning Patty Caz that year.
Nice. All right. Well, so Vicky, that's probably takes care of our chat for tonight. But thank you very much for coming on.
Well, yeah, man, that was fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And we'll obviously stay in touch, and I can't wait to hear more about your project as it unfolds.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Scotty.
No problem, Vicky. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.